I went on stage and I literally hadn't opened my mouth and I was just hit by a barrage of plastic glasses and pint glasses of lager.
Because you weren't a pacer either.
Yeah. I was flat-chested and trying to be funny. I mean, how fucking dare I?
Yeah.
But I think James was so mortified. He went missing in action, didn't he, that night?
He did. Wasn't he found by the side of the motorway?
Yeah, he was in a ditch.
We are proud to be sponsored by On Beer, the only alcohol-free beer scientifically proven to give you a buzz. I drink it, and I like the buzz. Support the show, get 15% off, and keep me in a job. Search On Beer and use the code MARTIN15. So I've got to start by asking Jenny Eclair, for it is she. Welcome. And why weren't you in the BBC Loaded documentary?
It's almost rude to be asked that, but I'm going to tell you exactly. Well, they weren't offering any money at all.
Oh, you were asked?
Yeah, I was asked to do it as well, and I sort of was quite tempted. I did watch it, and I thought it was beautifully done. But I find the whole thing quite triggering as well because, you know, as you rightly said about the whole 90s thing, it was a lot of effort to have that much fun, and there was a lot of feeling very soiled by it all. And I think that for me, anyway, I was living in two personas, and the only reason why I won the Perrier is because I adapted my stage act to fit in with the zeitgeist. I mean, I'd always been quite funny and I was doing quite well, but then suddenly it was the mid-90s. I was panicking because I was in my mid-30s. And that's the panicking decade, isn't it? That's when you start to think, fucking hell. I'm running out of excuses here. And the thing about when you're 35 as well is you're as close to 50 as you are to 20. Just like to drop that in case there's any 30-somethings listening.
You're tuned in by accident.
And I go, oh, Jesus. And I just got noticed because I'd been doing a lot of yoga. I was wearing PVC trousers, which meant that I just spent 3 weeks in Edinburgh performing with just chronic thrush, really. And my partner, Jeff, had taken our child to Mallorca, where he used to pretend to be a widower on the beach. Because I was never there.
You were never there.
I was never there. And ladies would look at him kindly and look after Phoebe, and he could have a nice cold beer in the sun.
What a good idea.
I know. So it was, I was thrilled to get the Perrier, and it was everything I wanted for the night. But I think this is kind of not where it went wrong for me, but where I realised that I often wasn't coping with the 90s was the night I won the Perrier. It was all flashbulbs and flowers and champagne. Now, had I got any self-preservation, I'd have finished about it was announced at midnight. I'd have stopped at 1 o'clock. Yeah. I'd have gone home and I'd have had a piece of toast. And of course, I got absolutely fucking pissed out of my head. Yeah, it was the mid-1990s, but I forgot I had to gig again the next day.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And of course, I died on my arse. I mean, I was up...
Perrier Award.
Yeah.
For 18 hours and you died.
I was weeping with hangover. I mean, you know, that sort of just jittery and frightened and anxious and upset and sort of...
That was my entire decade.
Absolutely. Well, you know, the whole thing, it was all bravado and it was great. The great moments were great, but the fallout from it was sometimes just very hard to deal with.
I think that's why I like it as a subject, because it was headline. I mean, for me anyway, let's hear definitely from different gender and all the rest of it. But for me personally, it was a great decade, clearly, because I started the decade working with your husband at the TV Times, although he didn't know it because he was a royalty.
He was quite senior. Yeah, you were just a boy.
I wasn't even on staff. I was a freelance sub editor. But
you weren't allowed to use the lifts. What? You had to walk up. He was the art editor.
I know.
Yeah.
But I still made a fortune. He paid you so well.
Yeah, I know. At the time. I mean, magazines, again, in the 90s and the 80s. Yeah. Well, I mean, the first magazine for me was in the 70s and it was Jackie magazine. I don't know what it was for you. There was a big hole for boys, wasn't there? For sort of teen magazine. This is why Loaded came in.
The only magazines that advertisers could find men in were motoring and porn.
And fishing.
Fishing, football and caravans. Yeah, I mean, it was that IPC had them all. And they came apparently to James Brown and said, bring us all the men who And he did.
All, and I want them naked and chained. Hold on, but you said you were co-founder of Loaded.
Yes.
And you've just sort of said that James was approached.
Oh, yes. I think I used co-founder in absolutely the most self-aggrandizing way. Yes, there was a team of 6 of us who started them.
And they were?
And they were. We want me to
Who were they?
remember all their names.
Yeah.
Yes, well, there's James Brown. James and Tim Southwell were the 2 big people. They had maybe 9 months in an office coming up with this concept for a magazine.
Development? 9 months of development. Can you imagine anyone getting that now?
Well, can you imagine how much they did? It being 1993. We got there. Tim had turned the office into a small golf course. They had a dummy of a magazine called The Right Stuff. And they just said, we've got about 6 weeks to launch this magazine. We better get a crack on. And so the 6 people who started, myself, Michael Holden,
lovely
Mick
Michael
Bunnage, Stephen John on the art team. I'm always going to forget someone. I always think it's only fair to say we collectively formed it, because it was essentially.
And would James agree with that?
Absolutely not. No. Never in a million years. He wouldn't even utter Tim Southwell's name generally. And Tim is very touchy about it. It's a very touchy area. But I just think it was a cooperative thing. Miranda Stoyer came up with the name Loaded, which is hilarious.
Because Miranda was going out with James for a while, wasn't he?
They were having a sort of no strings kind of. He says that they were. I remember him very clearly walking in one morning and going, right, it's called Loaded. Miranda's had to come up with the idea, and it was a brilliant title because it said it all.
Well, Miranda is a very clever girl.
Very clever.
And I haven't read her recent book, but I should.
It's good about the 90s music. So,
there you go. You see, it's all part of a theme now, isn't it? You should get her on. You're going to get her on.
I'm absolutely going to get her on. Yeah, she'd be brilliant.
She's actually one of the sexiest women I've ever looked at. Her brother, I met her brother once. What a pretty boy he was.
Tom Sawyer?
It's not called Tom Sawyer. I fell for that. Did you see my gorgeous face go, ooh, is he called Tom?
Who is her brother?
I don't know. Right. Can't remember. Okay. I remember him being at a thing, and I remember thinking, oh, that's a very attractive young lad.
Is he elfin? I mean, she's quite elfin.
Oh, yeah. But she's more than elfin, isn't she? She's goblin. She's too clever just to be elfin.
Right.
She's got a touch of the goblin about her. And I mean that in a really, sometimes I forget words. It's because I'm 65.
Yes.
Complimentary kind of way. I'd rather be goblin than.
That's quite sort of Lord of the Rings flying here in the knowledge. I'm not sure the difference between goblins and elves.
You might have to edit that out. I don't know.
No, absolutely not.
But, so you were, so it was 1993.
So in a sense, Mick Bunnage, for instance, made up the kind of the Platinum Rogues at the front, which was a key part. The what was it called? The Calendar of Bad Behaviour. If I had a contribution, it was just that when I went on to write a feature, I was so terrified I'd get absolutely arseholed, take loads of drugs and write about it, because my hero is Hunter S. Thompson, the American rock and roll. So if I contributed anything, I contributed the Gonzo bit. Michael Holden contributed just hilarious humour and intelligence, all different elements.
And a sweetness. He always had a sweetness underneath it.
I do. I was quite jealous, I could tell.
No, I always the thing about the Loaded Boys was sort of en masse, terrifying, kind of very intimidating. Yeah. I mean, I went to an all-girls school. I went to, I'm 65, so I was born in 1960. I went to a northern all-girls grammar school in 1971 and stayed there till I was 18. I didn't know how to talk to boys. And when I'm on stage, I say, the reason why I sucked off so many boys was because I was so shy. I was so shy. It was just.
Did you avoid making eye contact?
I couldn't make eye contact, and I was brought up to believe it was rude to talk with your mouth full. So it just solved all the problems. There's no conversation needed. I genuinely, we were brought up at a very odd time. I've got 5 years on you. So I was, after my dad came out of the army, we'd settled in a place called Lytham St Anne's, which is near Blackpool. And I do believe that seaside places have a sort of saltiness that, you kind of absorb. And we were basted in sexism. My generation of women were just like, if you didn't get a whistle when you walked past a building site, then there was something physically wrong with you.
They're quite sort of fingery, aren't they? Seaside sounds like.
Hold on, where did the fingering come in?
Well, I'm thinking they're just like bus shelters, hurried sex in the rain.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of that film that was we might have to look this up, in the 80s or 90s. Was it? It was a very good film.
Was it Rita Sue and Bob too? No,
that is a very good film.
Or is it the other one with the girl on the bike?
probably on the
don't know. But there was a lot of fingering on benches and at bus stops. Yeah, there was. You know, my older sister, who's 3 years older than me, didn't do that. She didn't have that kind of teenage. She was a head girl, and it was like, I don't know. I've always been a real mix of very reckless with this kind of strong sense of duty and work ethic that runs through. So every time I'm sort of on the verge, I think that's why I'm still with Jeff. Jeff and I met when I was 22. As I say in the book, I was very badly behaved for some of our relationship. And he knew, and the fact that he let me stay is, testament to him. He was in it for the long game and the love of our daughter. But I was terribly selfish.
That really comes across in the book very strongly and is very moving.
Good.
The commitment of Jeff to you and vice versa. And the love you have for both of them.
Yeah.
I said to you before, it is like an extended love letter in some ways. I thought to them, and also to what you've just been saying, to your dedication to work, given that you also have this devil inside you, pulling you the other way as well. But the work one has won most of the time.
Most of the time. Sometimes I've combined both. But, I met Jeff when I was 22 and I saw him I clocked him when I was living with, you remember the pop star Joe Jackson when I was living with his wife?
Yeah. Love Joe Jackson.
Joe was touring America. I was living with Ruth and I walked out the flat and I saw Jeff and he was fixing his Porsche. He had a Porsche like James Dean.
Can I just say this is a completely different story to the one in the book?
Is it?
You're waiting on tables.
Oh, yeah. No, and then I was waiting tables on restaurants and he came into the thing and he'd followed me. He was a bit of a stalker, in fact. And I knew, I turned to my friend Philippa and I said, table 6 is mine. I knew then very, very clearly that he would be the man that would save my life.
That's amazing.
But there were many years where I pushed his ability to save my life right to the very brink.
Do you think you were doing that kind of psychological thing of like, let's see how much you really love me? Or are you just
I think that I drank too much.
Yeah.
It was the time, it was the 90s, this sort of very toxic. We all caught it. I mean, it got out of control in the end. I mean, I think, watching the Loaded documentary, you see how it spiraled.
Do you see my face? I started off looking like fucking Aled Jones, and by the end of it, I looked like I've been dug up like Nosferatu in 3 years.
Yeah, well, that was coke, wasn't it?
And vast amounts of alcohol. But I think what you said a few minutes ago resonated to me, where you said, you'd done the Perrier Award, should have gone back. There was a huge pressure, external, but also internal.
Yeah.
I would have thought, if that had been me, what kind of idiot would go to bed now? I've just won an award. I have to absolutely smash it. I'll be dead by the time I'm 32, or in your case, 42.
Thank you. But I remember, I mean, the feeling so atrocious afterwards and sort of, and I say this in the book where I had to go for an interview with a female journalist from the Mail who, get this, turned to me after 10 minutes of me crying and sort of gagging on my own sick, her saying, I'm not going to do this interview because you're in no fit state.
A Daily Mail
journalist who had bought me a cream tea.
You need to buy her a cream tea now.
I know. And but I wasn't a big enough name. I mean, that was the other thing. We were getting away with stuff because we weren't big enough names. We were sort of mucking about in the shallow end of celebrity.
I remember Alexi Sale saying that to me in that decade, said the mistake this lot, and by this lot he meant Jonathan Ross, people like that, said the mistake they're making is by talking to the tabloids. Once you've spoken to them once, they think they own you. You're a kind of tabloid character. And then when they got a quiet news day, they'll put a stakeout outside your house and see if you're having an affair or something like that. Not that it ever happened to Jonathan Ross, but I think you're right. And how much lower down the pecking order was I?
Well, no, I never got very high up the pecking order, and I'm still angry about that because I think I should have I deserve to have got more stuff out of my career. I know that sounds really childish, but I fucking get really angry.
Let me just say, it comes across strongly in there. Very strong.
I have a bit of a victim complex, don't I?
Two things I think I've got to say. One, you've done really well. I mean, but on the other hand, I am outraged on your behalf.
Yeah.
This is one, but this is the most, there's a lot of shocking things in that book, but the most shocking thing to me is that not once have you ever been offered, have I got news for you?
No.
And you have been offered question time multiple times.
Oh, yeah. But the money's shit. I'm not doing question time. I'm not going to get 50 quid to make, the whole, people watching that just realise very quickly how ridiculously thick I am. I mean, what I got very quickly mixing with the Loaded lads, I can't remember how many times we actually met, but it was how clever they all were. I realised very quickly that they were. That you can't be funny without being clever. I mean, you can be a clown, you can be a fucking idiot, you can be amusing, but you can't be consistently clever unless you can't be consistently funny unless you have some kind of functioning brain. I have a functioning brain, but I'm not very well educated because I stopped listening when I was about 14. But you didn't. You got exams and you went to. Did you go to Cambridge?
I did go to Cambridge.
There you go.
I mean, yes, it's different, isn't it? Because to me, it was the cleverest. Actually, it probably was the cleverest room I've ever been in. And I have worked for the Times and the Telegraph, etc. Loaded was the cleverest room. Most of the guys there, I think I'm right in saying almost everyone, apart from me and perhaps one other, hadn't been to university, but they were much more impressive because they were self-educated.
Yeah.
But the other side was we didn't have your performance gene. So not many of us really ever managed to parlay that success through into doing things like you've done. And in fact, we didn't have the work ethic that you've had. So I'm someone that will take enormous dispute with this. I always feel a little bit disappointed collectively in all of us because we were the stars of our generation. And
I don't think it's too late.
I don't think it's hence the podcast.
Oh,
this is my last fucking desperate stab.
But no, this isn't. Who knows? I mean, but I think it's not too late to write a really fucking great book.
True, good points.
And I think that all of you could write, and I think that you were bright, and there was a lot of wit. The wit level was sometimes it was that kind of thing when you're in a room with people like that. Sometimes you have to pretend you need to go to the toilet because you just need a breather from it.
Yes,
do you know? And you just have to go and put your head against cold white tiles and go, okay, right, I'll go back in there and I'll be brave. And part of the being brave was to go back and light another cigarette and just sort of so you knew you could look cool, even if inside you were going, Jesus God, what am I going to have?
You say that a lot in the book, which of course, they always say that thing, don't compare your inside to someone else's outside. You looked so confident, and yet you say you were in these rooms with particularly other comedians where you just feel, I can't compete with the Frank Skinners or the Mark Thomases, those sort of people.
Oh, I'm not sure about whether it was Mark Thomas. It was, I can't, there were lots of male comics I didn't feel I could compete with because a lot of male comics go for the gag before I do.
Right.
And I never felt I could quite do it as fast. When I did work with Frank Skinner on a sitcom, which was much reviled and sort of, although it got millions of people viewing it because that's what telly was like in those days. But I mean, I think that, when do you think it stopped? When do you think that whole when did Loaded fold? And do you remember the live tour?
Oh, Christ.
Did you go on that?
I don't know. So it didn't stop. It petered, I think. I mean, change. I mean, I'll sound incredibly arrogant, but me and James left in 1998. Tim made a really good fist of it. Michael stayed. But very quickly, one of the many genius things that James had is that he stood up to the publishing tower block next to us. And I didn't realize at the time how much, of course, they try and bully you into doing other things. And the guys who were there left couldn't quite do that. So they were coming over and saying, look, FHM's launched.
Yeah.
They're putting a pair of tits on the cover every month. What's wrong with you? Why are you still putting Suggs? Things like that. And so they just got, and that's when the whole thing, and then they launched Nuts and they launched Zoo. And to me, that's when it became so embarrassing. By then I was at GQ, a better class of porn mag. And it was embarrassing to see where lad mags had become. And then the 2000s happened, which we know is the brand decade, the Russell Brand decade, when I think the whole lad thing went really badly wrong because it went very mainstream. I was presenting a show on VH1. It shows how mad the mainstream was. And I just
was that? A TV show?
Yeah, called Planet. It's a funny story. Planet Celebrity News Paul King, pop star,
I
was
remember
my boss.
him.
I'll tell you very quickly.
Was he in a band, Paul King?
Paul King. Yeah, Paul called King. So they got me in. They wanted the woman Camilla.
Big long nose, like an anteater.
Yeah. I don't like him to stay because he fired me. They wanted Camilla from Pop Bitch to do it, and she wanted £1 million. So they phoned me up, and I said I'd do it for £1,000 a week. And of course, that was huge money for me at the time. Did 6 months. Planet Celebrity News, slagging off celebrities. At the end of it, he calls me into his office. He says, Martin, he goes, when we started this show, we thought the target woman was a 22-year-old woman who works in PR in London, and she loved you. In fact, we've done the research. It now turns out it's a 28-year-old single mother from Rotherham, and she thinks you're a twat. And it was a ruder word than twat, beginning with C, and I got fired. So I found that whole next decade much more tricky in a way when it became kind of lad culture went mainstream.
Yeah, and how old you are? How old are you in the year 2000? You're 35.
Yes, exactly.
35. You're 35. So I'm kind of like...
That's my crisis like you had. Yes.
Yeah. I'm 40. So when all that peaked and it's kind of being over, I had a massive sort of turnaround of what I was doing in my life. And I was still gigging, and I love gigging. But I mean, Phoebe was about 11 at that point, and she was suddenly going to her, posh girls, clever girls' school, day school in Dulwich. And I suddenly she started writing me letters when she was about 8 saying, I love you, but I hate your job.
Really?
Yeah. She's always been very emotionally manipulative, and which is why she's a good writer. And I just suddenly thought, this is difficult for her. And so I sort of took down the beehive and cut my hair back into a bob, and I wore my glasses, and I stopped smiling in photos. And I was doing my Take Me Seriously bit because I'd written my first novel.
I was going to say, yes.
Only because I'm so competitive and nasty that I'd read a David Baddiel novel. And I remember sitting on the toilet thinking, how the fuck's he got this? How's he got this deal? He's with my management. They can get me this deal. And of course, what David has that I don't have is a double first or something from Cambridge.
Yes.
I got an E in my English A-level. I'm really lucky to have got away with...
You've written so much.
I've written a lot. Yeah, I have written a lot. I feel that there's still more to write, but I now know how exhausting it is. It's a bit like, I think, if you've ever been a mountain climber, which I'm very glad to say I never have, couldn't think of anything worse, but you know how hard it is. Mm-hmm. So if I have a project on the go at the moment, which I would like to be the next novel, but sometimes I just feel winded by it. I feel sort of like, I need some Kendall mint cake to keep me going. It's just like, I'm just standing there in the Lake District with the cagoule on, and it's really fucking hard.
I have just massive admiration for anyone who even finishes a book. If it then happens to be good as well, they go massively up in my esteem. It's beyond me. A 3,000-word feature. I reach the end of that, and I'm in bits.
Yeah, but that's your training. That's because you're a journalist through and through, and that's why you approach everything with that target in mind, and you just have to change your mindset a bit and just go, well, that's a chapter or that's 3 chapters. Get on with it.
And now a word from our sponsor. Like a lot of us who lived through the 90s, I tried to keep my drinking in check. I've had my sober stretches and my less sober ones. One thing that helps is alcohol-free beer. But let's be honest, if there's one thing wrong with alcohol-free beer, there's no buzz. That's where On Beer comes in. It's a non-alcoholic beer packed with botanicals and herbs designed to give you what the makers call a feel-good lift. They say a bottle or two feels like you're just tucking into your second pint. And in my experience, they're not far wrong. I was drinking On Beer before they sponsored my podcast. In fact, I was the one who approached them. So if you want to try something new that gives you a bit of a buzz, take On Beer out for a spin and use this discount code, Martin15, to get a buzzing 15% off. Stay sober. And if you can't stay sober, stay buzzy.
I think it's sad what happened to Loaded. I think it was sad that Loaded got accused of doing things that they didn't do, including, it wasn't you lot that did the Gale.
That's the one problem of quite a few of us. I personally not that bothered, but a lot of people have a problem with that documentary because Gail Porter, who was treated appallingly, was FHM, different magazine. Yeah. And it's easy to watch that show and forget that. We didn't do that. And there's some other nasty stuff later on by a later editor that was done, grabbing girls off the street and giving them 50 quid to do corny pictures in the corner.
No.
That was Loaded. I mean, Derek's the most lovely, sensitive guy, but I don't know how he got involved in that. Again, pressure from publishers. But yes, it was quite shaming to me. And I found the whole loaded thing quite shaming for quite a long time. And that documentary was quite helpful to me because it just made me realise it was actually culturally brilliant and funny and clever.
It could have only belonged at that time, in that moment. But the tour, the live tour,
Jesus Christ!
I mean, it was just insane.
Yeah,
I think I was invited to one. And I think the gig was at the Road Menders in Northampton, which is like sort of working men's club, opened up to other people. And he had me, and he had some page 3 girls?
Kathy Lloyd,
yeah,
Joe Guest,
yeah.
I can't remember who else was on that particular
There was
night.
Jane Middlemass was around a lot, but she didn't do that tour.
No.
But I remember doing sort of things. We did perfume testing.
You were at the Perfume World Cup, which was turned into sort of semi-orgy.
I can't.
Belly
It's
back?
all quite vague. I remember Pam Hogg was
pictures.
there.
Yes.
I'm not sure I need to see the pictures, but the live gig at the Road Menders. I went on stage and I literally hadn't opened my mouth, and I was just hit by a barrage of plastic glasses and pint glasses of lager.
Because you weren't a pastry girl. Probably.
Yeah. I was flat chested and trying to be funny. I mean, how fucking dare I?
Yeah.
But I think James was so mortified. He went missing in action, didn't he? That night?
He did. Wasn't he found by the side of the motorway?
Yeah, he was in the ditch. It was like 3 days later. But it was like I suddenly thought I was back in the dressing room after that, and I'd had rough gigs, for quite a few number of years on the circuit. So, I mean, I was shocked. I was horrified by it. But I remember some of the Loaded boys just looking frightened.
I loathed the tour. The tour, I've said this before, was the turning point for me when, I've got a copy, this is the magazine here.
Is that Sean Bean?
That is Sean Bean. Very good. His eyesight's not that bad, is it?
It's Sean
That's
Bean.
you.
Oh my God.
So, look, I mean, this just shows how.
Yeah.
So, bondage porn and talking dirty. Laded, this is the issue. They are looking fabulous. But this cover line, I can't read it without embarrassment. Yes, it's Jenny Eclair, a filthy bitch takes over Loaded. Can you imagine you'd be cancelled now for that? And so I was surprised. We went on tour and suddenly I was confronted with.
That's not you I've got on a chain round.
Do you not remember?
I vaguely remember it, but this is when you'd stop looking like you. Or you were going through that funny phase where you were obviously on a lot of drugs, because later on when I met you, I was sort of like taken aback by how pretty you were.
Oh, bless you. Well, yes, I got very bloated. So what happened there? I vaguely knew you were coming in to do the magazine, but I was traveling the whole time. Look, you follow the bookmark. And they said, I walked in one day. I'd been in New Orleans for 10 days.
Yeah.
Covering Mardi Gras as a story, i.e. drinking tequila.
Yeah.
And then as a member of the New Orleans police force for 3 days. So sitting in the back of a cop car. And they went, this afternoon, you're getting trussed up by Jenny Eclair in a bondage photo shoot.
Yeah.
It was the most embarrassing thing that happened to me in the 90s because I'm so bloated. I've got man boobs.
Yeah, you're not looking your best there, Martin. This has got to. I mean, I don't know how we show this to camera, but I think you need to do a cutaway here.
Yes, good idea.
Because you're also wearing a shirt and tie. Were you kind of trying to be a role? Were you man from Office?
No, yes, I suppose that was it. No, that was all given to me by wardrobe.
And I'm attempting to beat you with a stick.
You look like you're loving it.
I'm looking like I love it, but inside, I think on that shoot, I was meant to give someone a love bite, and I've never been able to give them. And I remember thinking, I don't know how to really do love bites, but I was, because of my stage persona at the time, and I remember getting a lot of jobs like this, and I didn't know how to turn anything down. And my management were very encouraging of me being this kind of personality. I had a sex show on some obscure channel. I wore a lot of latex for a number of years, and I remember a Time Out sent me can you imagine this? 10 dildos to try out. And
Jesus. I mean,
I had to critique. And there was a double-ended black one. That was like, so, I mean, it was heavy. It was hard to lift up. Right. And I think I was meant to put one end in my vagina and the other in my bum hole. And I think I just made a load of rubbish up. I thought, I don't really want to do this.
I'm not often speechless.
I know, but can you imagine?
What was wrong with both of us? That I should have said no to that shit. We just wouldn't say no to anything. James would go to me, I want to humiliate you like this. Time Out, frankly, are saying to you they want to humiliate you like this.
Yeah. I'm lapping it up.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to say no.
Yeah.
I mean, as I say, it all sort of started going wrong, not going wrong, but wayward for me when I was about 15 and lost my virginity to a 22-year-old Hell's Angel. And there was this sort of acceptance in my year at school that was how we kind of, even the good girls were slags. Not some of them. There was a percentage that weren't, but I'd say 30% of us were, definitely sort of not out of control, because I was very nice to my parents. I was never that much trouble. I wasn't rude to my mum and dad. I loved my mum and dad. I liked going home. I liked my little brother. I even liked my older sister. It was an odd thing. It was like
something about the era, wasn't there? Because that was a bit like I was saying before. If I had the opportunity to do drugs or take alcohol in an entirely inappropriate setting, like a job interview, which happened to me later on, job interview for GQ, I couldn't resist going to a line of coke in the loo at the chairman's house, because that was rock and roll. I was showing that I was giving a finger.
Did they know you were doing it, or were you just did you just want the confidence boost? Maybe you were a little bit addicted.
Oh, well, they had all those things, but I think also there was kind of like, look, this will be a great anecdote.
Yeah.
This is the kind of shit.
This is 3,000 words of copy.
People flying me all over the world, and I'm going to show how cool I am by doing loads of drugs and writing about it in the article. It was kind of a braggadocio.
I think that I was quite, I did have a daughter at the time as well, so I was definitely putting on different hats, though. There was the sort of stage Jenny, and it didn't really have any long-term success. It was so limited. I mean, it's like, I suppose, like Loaded as well. You could only do it for so long before time moved on, and I realised. Everyone got ill or mad or completely had a breakdown, and I had to change my personality. Eventually, it took me a long time to realise that I could just be me on stage. It took me a really long time. Yeah.
Well, I can't imagine, because that on the tour, I was an absolute mess. Because
what did you do on it?
Oh, it's fucking ridiculous. We hadn't rehearsed. We hadn't even talked about it. We were just like, we're going to go on tour. So you just get absolutely arseholed.
But was it meant to be a talking thing? Did you? Because I remember the Page 3 girls
was the idea.
were sitting on high
evening
stools.
With.
Yeah,
but of course, the first time I ever did, the first one we all did was in Nottingham. 600 people. Is it called Sound City, whatever it's called there? 600 guys, and the same thing. We walked on stage, microphones and chairs, thinking it would be like an evening with vibe, tell me about the time so-and-so happened. And it was wave of beer hit the stage. Yeah. And what shocked me, which sounds like it should have been amazing, but it wasn't, was 600 guys going, Deeson, Deeson, Deeson. And it sounded like a fucking Nuremberg rally to me. Yeah. And I'm an introvert by nature. Now I'm much better, but at 28, I communicated with the world through a keyboard. And to suddenly be on stage like that, I just would drink more. And of course, that made it worse. I fell off the stage in one place and really hurt myself. And it was horrible. Frankly. I mean, but like you say in the book, I was walking around going, you must be having a good time because this is fucking amazing. Most other lads your age would kid their back teeth for this. You must be having a good time. Yeah. I don't feel like I'm having a good time.
I just wanted to get under the duvet and put the blanket over my head. I'm tired. But as I say, I think I was fortunate being 40 in 2000 because I suddenly felt like an old ladette. It was Zoe Ball was around and she was just so young and fresh and pretty and sort of, in some respect, brought a kind of different thing into it. It wasn't quite so hardcore with Zoe and some of those girls. And I just sort of thought, I've got to sort of distance myself. And I wanted to write something that, my daughter could sort of say, oh no, my mum writes books or something. I just didn't want to be the character I was being.
And that's been hugely successful. That's, again, I keep saying it, but the longevity in your book that you are, I suppose, and you talk about yourself in the book all the time as a comedian.
I talk about myself in the book all the time.
But as a comedian, but the other stuff, 7 novels, the monologues for radio. Was it 28? I think
there are
right? 28. I mean, just phenomenal achievements. The constant touring, And what I was going to bring us on to, the two podcasts. I know there's one called Older and Wider.
Yeah, Older and Wider is with Judith Holder, who was the original TV producer of Grumpy Old Women, and is a sort of, the head girl to my sort of naughty girl of the lower fifth, even though she is actually more capable of doing ridiculous things than I am. But it's more surprising when she does them because she lives in a thatched house.
Nice.
And the other one I do a podcast called Taskmaster the People's Podcast with a guy called Jack Bernhardt, who's a statistician, and it's for real Taskmaster nerds. I think doing a podcast has made me a better comic because it's made me better at improvising, which was something I was always terrified of. I mean, when the whole Loaded experience, I'd be almost practicing lines in my head that I could say when I went back in the room. Everything was terribly scripted and sort of, I didn't want anyone to realise that this was quite faked.
You did it well, though.
I did it beautifully. Yeah.
Because in the book you say that your whole performances were scripted from start to finish, which you never would have thought to see. I mean, some of it, yes, but you'd have thought you're rolling and making up stuff.
No. I'm a writer, and I'm a writer and a performer, and no, I'm a crap actress. I tried that, and there was nothing worse than me as an actress.
I don't believe that.
No. I went to drama school. I didn't go to university. I have no degree or anything. But I went to drama school and I not wimped out. I was too mentally unwell to finish it, obviously, because I had an eating disorder. And but I could never convince myself of being another character when I was on stage. The only character I could convince myself of was being the ladette Jenny Eclair. I slipped into that role quite easily.
Isn't it?
But if it wasn't playing a potty-mouthed slag, I couldn't do it. So I'd be playing Russians or whatever at drama school, and I'd be going, "Oh, look at you!" Or I remember doing a sort of Roman thing and with Roman sandals on, and I had this inner commentary all the time, going, "Oh, look at you, pretending to be a Roman lady."
Isn't that funny? So you could do this one that must have been somewhere in there.
It is.
But it makes me think of Pauline Calf or something. You remember Pauline Calf?
Yes,
it was fantastic.
Yes,
but it, like you say, I'm only quoting you back. You were a bit of a slag when you were at school.
Yeah.
And you kind of dug that up.
Put
PVC on it and brushed it out for the 90s.
Yeah. And so I always say, and Jenny Eclair isn't even my real name, and I say on stage now that she is a sort of show business tapeworm. She's always been inside, and she just comes out in various guises. And now the guise she is in, it's me, really,
Do you think of yourself as Jenny Eclair or as Jenny?
No, I don't. I can tell you my surname, but I think it's up to people to buy the book. I find it difficult to sort of call myself by my real name. It feels wrong.
Is it on your checkbook? If that's
checkbook.
1940s reference on your ration card.
No, it isn't. Everything's in my stage name.
Right.
Yeah. Right. You keep looking at your watch. Very rude.
Well, because I was looking at my watch because you made it abundantly clear.
Yeah.
No. I had 1 hour and no more. And I just wanted to not.
No. I'm not bored yet
because you've got a book to write.
I'd like to. Wouldn't it be nice? Okay, go on. What else?
I'm interested in the podcast thing because I realised I've got someone here. I'm starting out. Last figure I saw, and this was 3. I couldn't find a figure more recent. You'd had 5.5 million downloads for Older and Wider. So that means you must have now had 6 million or more downloads. You're obviously, you are. I've listened to it. You're very natural and easy. Tell me more. I'm intrigued by your great sense of community with your audience.
It's a gang. It is a gang. Older and Wider is a lo-fi version of Grumpy Old Women. Grumpy Old Women came along when I was actually 44, which is obscene, really, to be offered. I mean, again, the career was slightly in the doldrums. The agent phones up, says, do you want 400 quid? I'd take 400 quid for anything, reviewing dildos, anything. So I go and do this, it was Talking Heads. Do you remember all those Talking Heads programs?
All that stuff. 150 quid and Addison Lee car.
Yeah.
20 greatest celebrity moments. They still show them now. I get people in the street going, I saw you. I'm telling you, I'm like, are you fucking kidding? No repeat fees.
I know. But so 400 quid was a lot, but it was for quite a few. Anyway, and it was one of those ones which was the Christmas special was the pilot of the women's one, and it was an instant hit. So Judith and I wrote Grumpy excuse me, acid reflux. We wrote Grumpy Old Women, the stage shows. There were 4 of them. They were big. They were big. They were sort of, they had vans and they had technicians and they had sets and all sorts of things. And they were not what people were expecting, which was a lazy version of like the vagina monologue. So anyway, so we started Older and Wider, the podcast, in 2018 or 19, on the same day as Chris and Rosie Ramsey, with the same producer. Now, one of those podcasts is now performing in arenas, and the other one isn't. The other one is advertising dog castration by
I did
pills.
notice.
Yeah.
I thought that was a piss.
And
You're actually doing a voice ad at the moment.
And I start the advert by saying,
castration.
let's talk about chemical dog castration or something like that. And you just think, oh, God,
Yeah, but your honesty is searing, and that is a performer. I mean, I suppose I have it as a writer, but your honesty in front of Jeff, in front of your daughter, in front of your audience. I heard you on your podcast the other day shocking your co-host by talking about your cocaine years with Jeff.
Well, Jeff used to get it from the TV Times.
I can't believe you said that again now. Yes.
Well, he wasn't the dealer. It wasn't his fault, and then it had really long deadlines. It's a long, long time ago. Jeff has got not an addictive bone in his body. Absolutely not. He can, sometimes I'll look down, he'll have started a beer and it'll still be there, when we're going up to bed. He just doesn't, he doesn't have that. Phoebe doesn't have it either. And I'm grateful for that. Be interesting to see which way Arlo, her son, goes. It's just life, really, isn't it? And it's just messy, and it's.
I mean, are you enjoying the journey? Because I do. There's some quote, and I can never remember it, so I won't get it right, but it always sounds good because it's from Seneca.
Yeah.
I think.
Senecot. You'll be sponsored by them.
I'll take
They're poop pills.
Quid, I'll do it.
Pills.
Seneca was, I think, a Roman philosopher. He had some quote. He did a whole thing about aging, where he just says, basically, people always go, oh, life's so quick. I'm like, fuck off, is it quick? I feel like I've been around for fucking millions of years. And he says that's a sign of a life well lived, because you're constantly learning and changing. And he said the ideal is that on your deathbed, you're kind of going, I think I finally cracked this. And that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I really enjoy myself, but I'm slightly aware of time running out. I feel that
morbid.
A bit morbid.
Do you?
Yeah.
How many good years do you reckon you've got in
Well,
there?
my mum she lost to marbles at 91 and died at 93. My dad died at 90. So if we do this sort of mean, the mean mode, the medium of that, about 91 and a half.
Yeah, but hold on. You've got like 50 years of medicine advances since then. I tell my daughter, because also I'm obviously terrified.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave her on her own. She says, when are you going to die? I say, about 120.
Yeah, well,
because
you'll be lucky.
I may be bullshitting her slightly. But no, but seriously, if your parents died in their 90s, you will probably that's good genes. You'll make it to 98.
Well, possibly, but I did give myself a bit of a hammering as well. And I don't do any exercise. I mean,
Do you not?
No, do you?
Yeah, I do a lot, actually.
Do you?
Yeah. I do a lot of walking, but I also do resistance weight training. Last night, I was meant to be at my first hot yoga session, but I tripped over a pine cone in the afternoon and twisted my ankle. But the intention was strong.
Yeah, well, the intention is
We are proud to be sponsored by On Beer, the only alcohol-free beer scientifically proven to give you a buzz. I drink it, and I like the buzz. Support the show, get 15% off, and keep me in a job. Search On Beer and use the code MARTIN15.